And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our web meeting tonight about team coaching. Answering the question of what is it and is it right for me and my team? I am Claudia from Top Coach Luxembourg in Luxembourg, and I work with corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, as well as their teams in tech and beyond. Susan, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Susan Shimamura of Why Not Coaching, and I've been coaching for a number of years after working in the corporate technology environment for many, many years. I work with individuals and corporate teams to optimize their performance and productivity.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump right into it. There's still, I think, some confusion sometimes about what team coaching is and how it can benefit teams and leaders and organizations. So we thought we would put this together. But first things first, let's talk about what is a team. And we didn't have any one definition here that would make sense, so we just combined a couple. John Katzenbach said quite early on in the definitions of teams and stuff, he said that a team is a small number of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose, a set of performance goals, and a shared approach for which they hold each other accountable. It's all very nice and good. I think most of us could agree to it. Professor Peter Hawkins, though, who Susan and I incidentally had the pleasure of studying with, he added the following: and which has ways of effectively meeting and communicating that raise morale and alignment, effectively engaging with all the team's key stakeholder groups and ways that individuals and the team can continually learn and develop. There it is. It is more than just a bunch of people thrown together in a room and given some tasks to do. Okay, fantastic.
All right.
Do you want to take it from here, Susan?
So if you work in corporate, every group of people that reports to a leader is called a team. But based on what Claudia just talked about, what a team is, it doesn't mean you're actually functioning as a team, even if you're called a team. So we've kind of outlined here the differences between a group and an actual team. So with regards to purpose, the group has the same broader goal of the organization, right? It's all inclusive, versus a team has a very specific purpose that it delivers upon to support the organization. With regards to leadership, there's usually a single, strong, clearly identified and focused leader. Within a team, there's often shared leadership roles. The members themselves in a group, they function independently of each other. When you're actually functioning as a team, you are interdependent. You are dependent upon your other team members to accomplish your goals or tasks. With regards to process, a group will discuss what they're going to do, decide who's going to do it, and then delegate to the team members to go off and get the stuff done. Within a team, same thing, discuss, define, decide, but then they'll work collaboratively together to achieve that goal. The focus on work in a group is very individual, whereas in a team, it is collective. And similar to, again, focusing on your goals. If I'm in a group, I focus on what I need to get done. I don't worry about what Claudia needs to get done. In a team, I care what Claudia needs to get done because it will impact what I get done. And again, accountability in a group, it's just me that I have to worry about. In a team, I'm worried about what I need to get done, what Claudia needs to get done, whatever anybody else in the team needs to get done. Any other comments on that, Claudia?
Yeah, I think that it's just very often we use the team without being so necessarily specific about what it is. And oftentimes groups are mislabeled. And sometimes we even get called in for team coaching when ultimately it's a group of individuals working independently and they're not really a team. So then the question is, should we bring them together? Is there a need for that? Or are they perfectly fine as a group? There's nothing wrong with either one of them. Okay.
Yes, yes, there are definitely questions to ask yourself if you're interested in team coaching, if you really need to be a team. All right. So one of the really interesting topics that Claudia and I have discussed is the interaction gap. And I like the play on words here, mind the gap, mind the interaction gap. So what this is, and you always say this, and I always forget this, Claudia, the sum is, what is, the sum is bigger than, I always forget the word.
Right. Well, the whole is bigger.
It's bigger, yes.
Age, right? The whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. Yes.
Yes. So you probably experienced this in your work environment. You have a great strategy, you know what you're going to do, you have all the management support, everybody understands the urgency, the team members all have the right skill set and the expertise, everything is perfect, and yet when you go and execute, it just does not work. It does not come together as we all imagined it should have. So what happened, right? What's missing? And in the book, Close the Interaction Gap from Mac Isaac and Anton McBurney, he talks about you have your strategy, you have your execution, but what's missing is the connection between the two, and that's the interaction. And the poor interaction leads to the bad decisions, the untapped talent, stalemates that reduce creativity or productivity. And that's why a lot of projects fail. And that's called the interaction gap. So in this study, and I'll briefly describe it, each team member received the same information and then was asked to answer 20 questions on their own individually. Then the team discussed those questions and came up with a team answer for each of those 20 questions. And that gap that you see, this interaction gap, is the difference between the best possible team score they could have gotten based on a lot of the individual answers and the actual team answer. And you can see the blue, which was the team answers, is much less than the potential possible score that could have gotten had they been able to tap into the individual expertise.
Yeah, so in essence, the answers were in the team, the answers existed, but in the moment of collaborating and discussing and interacting to come to a consensus about which answer would now be the team answer, up to 80% or more of answers got lost and the scores just fell dramatically. And this is not just in one team. This is relatively consistently that there was a huge drop in performance, and that's what they labeled then later the interaction gap. And so because so much of they say 90% of strategy is execution, but 90% of execution is collaboration and interaction. So if that part doesn't work, if the team doesn't gel, you might have the absolute smartest people that you can possibly hire in your team, but it's not really reaching that famous potential that people are always talking about, right? Like really unlocking your potential. And that's kind of what team coaching is after. Fantastic. But, this was just, one example of, something that can be seen in teams that might be suboptimal. But, there are a number of common challenges out there. There's stuff that keeps the leaders and teammates, incidentally, awake at night. And it can be very, very frustrating. I would like you to please take a second, and this might actually be then reused later in our Q&A, but if you can maybe capture some of the more common challenges that you have experienced or heard about in the chat, that would be really great. And maybe we can address some of these later on. At this point, I want to definitely say thank you to everybody who came. We hope that this is going to be valuable to you. And so let's see if anybody would like to mention any kind of common challenges that leaders and teams experience. Okay, while you guys think about it, why don't we go on to the next slide, Susan? Because here is, some of the things in no particular order, in no particular, order of importance of certain things that we have seen, by no means exhaustive. And for instance, the leader might realize that they're the only one speaking in meetings. We have all seen this, just everybody defers to the meetings. There's a lot of yay saying, and, maybe some concerns are not being voiced, some questions are not being asked, and so on. And it's the leader or somebody else who is maybe more forceful or vocal in the team who monopolizes the meeting. Susan?
Yeah, territorial behavior when it comes to information or resources. That's situations where people are secretive about the information they have. They may have spoken with somebody from or one of their stakeholders and have some information that would really benefit the team, but they're going to keep it to themselves because they see that as an advantage for them.
Yeah, information can give you power. Because you know something that others don't. Yes. Yep. And because there's often not sufficient communication and of between team members, sometimes we see that work gets duplicated. Tom didn't know that Jane was doing it as well. And so all of a sudden there's all this waste of resources and just frustrating duplication of work.
And often corporate can't keep up with the pace of change. Things are happening very, very fast, especially in this VUCA kind of environment now. And your leaders are asking for shifts in roles and responsibilities, and you can't shift quickly enough. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we see with our corporate teams we work with.
Yeah, there's, and oftentimes there's a lot of pushing stuff in and adding on top of what you already had, rather than, taking some stuff off the plate and putting other ones on. I just got a message here that there might be some buffering problems with streaming to YouTube. We are going to continue. I am also recording this in the case the YouTube streaming does fail. Never mind, I'm going to upload a recording, just FYI for those who came in through YouTube. Thank you. Where were we? Yeah, the pace of change. Leadership is thrashing around, and then the teams are thrashing around. There's a lot of context shifting. What was important today is no longer important tomorrow. It can be very destabilizing. Yeah. So the stakeholders are confused about the purpose and responsibilities of the team. And we see this all so often, that there's no real understanding of the stakeholders, that there's no real sense and clarity about how value is actually given to the stakeholders. What do they expect? How could they be a resource for the team as well? So this communication and this level of engagement often is suboptimal, for sure.
Yeah. And one of the key symptoms of that is a stakeholder will ask the same question of different team members and get different answers every time.
Yeah, and that speaks to clarity, that speaks to having a sense of what the team stands for and what the priorities are internally, so that everybody can kind of give the same face and the same brand, to the outside world, to all team external, the system external engagements, that there's one voice, one message, no matter who you talk to. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you'll also get the feeling that we're working harder and not smarter. We keep making the same mistakes over and over again. We're not learning. We're not taking the time to reflect on what could have been done differently or better. So yeah, we keep pushing really hard, and that gets really tiring.
Yes, and especially this go, 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 and everything out there is faster. So we need to go faster to catch up. And this steamrolling with execution, when do you take the time or have the time to slow down and think strategy and really get a sense of why you're doing all these things, if you're doing the right things, if your processes are aligned, and if you're working effectively, and all those good things that sometimes need a little different brain power and a little peace and quiet to figure out. Yeah. So everybody is pulled in too many directions, and sometimes sometimes there's a lot of work, period. But sometimes there's also a lack of prioritization, a lack of relying on one another, in a team, offloading, sharing workload, coming together in a shared leadership kind of paradigm in order to be able to move forward more efficiently.
Yep. And that kind of sounds like what Christopher posted in the chat, just too much to do. Just juggling and shifting.
Good one.
So yeah, definitely wearing too many hats.
Yeah.
And then just a sense of, the team is just not performing as well as they could. Yeah. You have all the right people, all the right skills, all the right expertise, but things just aren't getting done. And that could be a symptom of all the things we've already talked about already.
And all these things are often symptoms of just the team not coming together, and so really figuring out where the true issues lie and then trying to address them is also why having an external, in this case, team of coaches, because Susan and I co-coach, meaning there's two coaches that come in, that you have this external, unbiased, neutral, people coming in to take a look and maybe guide the process a little bit. Yeah. So, then obviously you have to do more with less resources. The main resource that we're talking about here is manpower. A lot of people are being let go without being replaced. Teams need to be lean and mean nowadays to even have a chance of doing well. And so underperforming teams are really at risk, and it takes the whole company at risk as well.
Yep. And again, responsibilities change. We work with teams that are shifting roles. And a lot of times the whole team doesn't fully understand or embrace that transition, or if you've had unclear narratives about who you are as a team and your purpose, then yeah, that causes a lot of churn.
Another thing that we see is teams becoming cross-functional all of a sudden, because instead of being grouped by function within a company, maybe they are grouped by major client or major customer or a major product line and things like that. So all of a sudden you have these different people, maybe from marketing, from sales, from engineering, and so on, coming together in new form kind of teams, and they don't talk the same language. They're just, yeah.
Which actually goes back to duplication of work.
Yes, it does. It does.
Other than that, there's something just as a leader, something just doesn't feel right with the team. And you're just not having as much fun as you used to have.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the motivation and engagement with the team, is really enjoying what you're doing and having fun with your team members.
Yeah. Yeah, because you spend most of your life at work. So let's make it a place where we want to be and where we can feel we're contributing to the best of our abilities. And, we see sometimes that clients, when they don't reach out to team coaches because they feel like they don't have this clear-cut goal and this clear-cut diagnosis of the one thing that needs to be addressed. But frankly, that's what team coaches are supposed to help you do. So, you can sit quietly in your lack of knowing in the beginning of what truly is at the core of the issue, because that's what typically happens first in the team coaching engagement, that together we are trying to figure this out.
Yeah, and a lot of our clients have reached out to us saying, they talk about these symptoms. I know this, I see this, I'm experiencing this. And it really comes down to, I don't know where to start to fix it, right? So not knowing is common. You know the symptoms, but you don't necessarily know what's causing it, and you have no idea how to fix it because you don't know where to start.
Exactly. Perfect.
So this, or do you want to start?
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is how team coaching can help. We do a lot of interviews and diagnostics, and we sit down to gain clarity overall about the team assessment, but then we hone in on gaining clarity on what their purpose is and what their branding is and what their narrative is. Because if the team doesn't have that solidly in their minds, they're going to confuse their stakeholders, not only external stakeholders, but internally, their own team members. And when you start causing confusion within your own team, it's going to make it very challenging to move forward and be highly productive.
Yeah, because not everybody's going to pull in the same direction, right? So it's just going to be this big, huge mess. Yeah. So a big part of all of this is most of the time is to enhance communication and collaboration. How do we work together in this particular team? Nowadays, it's even more of a challenge because, a lot of teams are remote teams that are culturally very diverse, because they might actually be geographically distant, and yet you have to come together in this with these shared goals, the shared purpose, and learn to work together. And so team coaching definitely can help with that. I think it's one of the biggest ones. A word that in the business is used a lot is also ensuring a sense of psychological safety. People can learn to speak up. People learn to listen to their teammates, and that there's a thing like constructive exchange and maybe even constructive conflict, but it's just things out. Okay. So sometimes there's things that need to be put to bed before new ways of communicating can take root, but that's what coaching is about. Yes.
Yes. And for Claudia and myself, right, that's one of the first things we do when we start to engage with the team is understand the psychological safety, because if you have that gap, if it is missing, that safety is missing, it is very difficult to work on the other pieces within the team if people are not willing or comfortable in speaking up, right?
Yeah.
Exploring the team's leadership needs and preferences. As Claudia mentioned, a lot of remote teams working over globally, right? So cultural diversity. So what kind of leadership is happening within the team as it is currently? And then really trying to figure out, is that the best and most productive kind of leadership style that the team needs? How can the team support the leader? How the leader supports the team? How can we actually define and contract the shared leadership program within the team is really critical.
Yeah.
Especially in a very fast moving environment. You need to be able to make decisions quickly.
And you don't also want to put all your eggs in one basket and rely too much on one particular person. If that person is not available at some point, let's say because they're on vacation or sick or, God forbid, laid off, then, you know, what happens to the team as a whole? So there needs to be some ownership of leadership for that team distributed a little bit throughout the entire set of teammates. So the next thing would be the streamlining of processes, and that's often to increase performance and productivity. We're talking about things like decision-making, accountability, also called follow-through, delegation, but also sometimes taking a step back and wondering, are the processes that we have in place still needed? Are they optimal for what we are trying to achieve? Not that 2 years ago, processes were put in place that were very hard to create and made absolute sense at that moment, but they might be already outdated. So just taking a little bit of a critical look at that.
Yeah, definitely going back to team learning and self-reflection is also looking at your processes, but increasing engagement with team members and stakeholders. Again, this goes back to psychological safety within the team, ensuring that everybody feels comfortable giving feedback, receiving feedback, having difficult conversations, understanding individual motivation, what inspires each team member to do their best. And again, creating a fun environment within the team is really important, right? You don't want to, you want to go into your job every day and experience joy, right? And motivation and excitement and inspiration. And then with your stakeholders, being really clear of who they are and what they expect and how they can actually support you, creating that feedback loop, bringing them in to get their ideas and suggestions about what products you should be delivering or what service you should be delivering. And really understanding or taking a very systemic view of where your team fits in and how you can provide the highest value.
Yeah, well said, Susan. Thank you. The last bullet here is developing team learning in order that team maturity can be elevated over time. And here I want to also say that when we say learning in this context, it's not training. It's literally more of the self-reflective kind of figuring out what did work for us, what didn't work for us, what did we try, what would we like to try next time, what are our strengths, what are weaknesses that maybe we need to work on a little bit more, that kind of learning. And there's individual learning of each individual team member, but there's also literally this learning as a team. How do we function better as a team? How have we developed over the course of the last sprint or the course of the last change effort or challenge or just work week for that matter, right? So, and one part of it though is that it helps if the team as a collective is really much more aware of the skill set and the contributions individuals can bring to the table. And so that it can be brought together like the most beautiful fitted puzzle piece kind of. So contribution evaluation is a part of this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Claudia and I learned early on is, does the team actually see themselves as a team? Or are they the group that we had referenced earlier, right? Because if they don't see themselves as a team, they can't develop as a team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember a case, and it was like that. They were a team. They were supposed to be a team. It would have been good for them to be a team, but the members of this leadership were so much more intimately connected with their team of subordinates as they were horizontally in their leadership team. It didn't gel. It wasn't top of mind for them. Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So are we done with the slide, Susan?
Yep.
Good. So now we are done, actually. I hope that this was at least in part interesting, just a very small taste. And maybe before we open it to Q&A here, if there's anything we can't get to today, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're available for questions and just a nice virtual coffee anytime. So, but at this point, I would open it for questions. Susan, shall we do that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to unpin us. And, you can close the slide, and we can then maybe bring or ask the folks to see if they want to turn their cameras on and go ahead and ask their questions.
Anyone have a question? Who has the first question? It has to be one question.
How is Matthew, by the way? I'm not sure how to turn on my video on the mobile phone, but anyway, how big of teams have you dealt with? I mean, sometimes the teams get so large that I guess one loses focus, I suppose. I mean, is there like an ideal size for a team, or? Hello?
Yes, yes.
I think organizationally, a lot of corporations have guidelines about how big a team should be. I know a former company I worked for, they set the limit at, I think, a 10 or 11 was a max of direct reports. So we can work with various sizes. We may break them down. That's a benefit of having two coaches work with a team to ensure the proper attention, but there's no necessarily limit on the size. We just have to kind of adjust and shift as needed.
Okay, I see.
For instance, you might have a team that actually makes a vision. The leadership might be 8 to 10 people, and each of them has direct reports that might even be geographically distant, one sub team from another, and then you just go into what in systems theory we call a team of teams, and you have to figure out where the boundaries are, and just take it in the appropriate things. There might be some discussions that can be had in a larger collective, and others that might really just be the core of, let's say, the leadership, or some specific sub team who might be struggling with some issue very specifically.
Yeah, and definitely one of the things with large teams is, if you have a large number of direct reports, is talking about shared leadership where other people can step in to various roles, so it's not all on one single leader. And also, one of the things that Claudia and I talk about is ensuring that those leaders have succession plans, so other people are ready to step up if they go on vacation. So yeah, there's a lot of things that help.
And again, I think that one thing maybe to stress here, in general, every team coaching engagement is custom. There is no one size fits all team coaching ever. If somebody tries to sell you on that, then, send it my way. I'll have a discussion with them.
Yes, it's a very bespoke model, right? People want to say, what's the outcome? Well, we don't know what the outcome is until we know what the issues are, and we don't know what the issues are until we go in and start talking with your team, right?
And that's even when we engage with a team or a company. It's like we do this piecemeal. First, we make diagnostics and assessments and interviews before we even figure out which workshops to run. We wouldn't know in the beginning, and so let's try to come to a common denominator, and then really focus in on the areas that we want to work on. And whether we need 3 or 4 or 10 sessions after that, 10 is a lot, but no matter how many we need is what's going to be decided as we go on. In the beginning, we don't have that information. And sometimes it's really hard for people to say, well, I don't know. And we have to figure this out as we go along, right?
Right.
So that's really the only way that you can do it, because otherwise you run the risk of running a program that is kind of based on average, right? And assume that your team's issues are like any other team's issues, and then you lose most of the power of team coaching.
Right. And one key point here, as Claudia was describing kind of our process, is Claudia and I, do not decide what the team needs to work on. We collaborate and work with the team, and the team decides what would be most beneficial to work on and improve.
Yeah. Because the responsibility ultimately lies with the team, right? I mean,
use your analogy of the fitness coach.
Yes. It applies mostly, let's say, for let's extend it to a soccer team or something like that, right? You have the coach, and the coach tries to bring you guys together and motivate you and come up maybe with some suggestions of strategy, but it's the players on the field who have to decide, and they're the ones who need to sweat ultimately. So it's like, it's not like the coach is going to do your work for you. Yeah.
Right.
Hi, Claudia and Susan. This is Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. Nice to see you. If I don't even know if there's one, but what is like one common mistake a leader makes often with their teams, i.e. to avoid it?
To avoid what?
Like a common mistake, maybe not getting team input, or I would think not being maybe collaborative enough, just being more directive. That doesn't work these days.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and Claudia, you can speak it. I think the big thing for leaders, firstly, is to really understand where they are with regards to psychological safety within the team. I feel like that's the foundation of everything else that stacks upon it. Because if people aren't speaking up in your meetings, or don't feel comfortable voicing their opinion or getting feedback or giving feedback, your growth and development as a team are going to be stunted. So taking the time to understand the psychological safety environment within your team, I think, is the first thing. And a lot of leaders, managers think they have it, but they haven't explicitly done a survey or something else to actually get that real feedback. The one thing that Claudia and I have talked about it, and from my own personal experiences, is you have people who want to say, oh, go ahead, just speak up. Well, or tell me if you don't feel comfortable speaking up. But you kind of have to have psychological safety to say you don't have psychological safety. So it's kind of a vicious circle there. So having somebody like coaches come in externally, not involved with the team, doing an assessment to give purely anonymous responses and feedback on psychological safety, I think, is key.
Yeah, and then opening up this space and creating and holding the space. And sorry, that's like coaching jargon, but the coaches in the audience will probably know what I'm talking about. It's like creating the space and holding the space where these things that are sometimes in the beginning uncomfortable can be talked about. Okay, and agreements can be put in place on how are we going to work together in our little team bubble, because we talked about culture before, and culture exists in the locations that we live, in our own selves, but also within the team, old culture. We all know that that exists sometimes, but also company culture. There's so many clashes. And one way around that sometimes is to just say, okay, irrespective of all of that, with the members of this team in this team bubble, when we are working together and we close the door on the outside world, how do we agree to work together? And that is very powerful. And so the other thing I think that then piggybacks on top of that is, how do we make decisions? And how do we make decisions by not creating conflicts? And incidentally, how do we put all conflicts to bed? Right. And so, there's so much that interplays. And again, every team is different. But like Susan said, like the psychological safety, bringing it out into the open and shining a big, huge, like construction light on it, I think would be the very first thing to do in order to become clearer about that, how people engage. I hope that helps you a little bit, Bonnie. Thank you for your question.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else?
Christopher, earlier you mentioned, is Christopher still here? Yes.
Yes.
That some of the struggles that he has identified and seen, whether it's in his own experience or around him, is, there's just too much to do, and juggling, shifting priorities. It's definitely a challenge nowadays, and resources are not getting bigger. All we can say is that, there's always kind of a reductive kind of situation happening. So, also there, you're not alone, or whoever was in this case was not alone. And it's a struggle. And I think as a leader as well, and we touched on it earlier, this forth and back between efficient execution and, more reflected strategic thinking, and how to bridge the two, because you can run on the rat wheel or the hamster wheel. You can run on the hamster wheel all you want, but if it's not what you should be doing, then it's also a big struggle. So irrespective, even when you have too much to do, and I'm using Christopher's words here, juggling these shifting priorities and so on, when the demand is such that it's just go, 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 go all day long, and your leadership is breathing down your neck, where do you then find the time or the peace, essentially, to just sometimes stop and evaluate and learn? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, are we doing on time? It is 10 minutes to 7. Anybody have any other question? It would be our absolute pleasure to say it. If you don't want to come on microphone, feel free to just put it in the chat box, and it will be our pleasure to address it.
Do you have any resources to, I don't know, explore more? I mean, I guess your presentation was all nice, but I'm sure it's just scratching the surface. I mean, is there a way to explore more before fully engaging you, or is there anything you recommend?
You want to take that?
Yeah, sorry, Bonnie just jumped up, and I just wanted to say thank you for her attendance. I mean, you obviously, I hope that you know just who out to us, no commitment. We are available to answer your questions, because so much of this, again, I hope we brought this across strong and clear, is custom, and every situation, every team is different. And yeah, I mean, there's some things I was working today on a Q&A I'm going to post on my website, topcoach.lu. It should be up in the next couple of days, which just gives, one line little answers to some common questions. So that is one resource. Within a month or two, I wrote a book that should be published on Amazon. And so you can follow me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you're going to get information about it. And that's exactly the same title than this particular web meeting. And it is, team coaching. What is it, and is it right for me and my team? So that's definitely in the works, and that would answer a lot of your questions, at least in terms of what does the engagement look like, what are some benefits some leaders are seeing, some challenges some teams are grappling with, and so on. Susan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, other than that, right, I think we're both open to scheduling, and we can put links in to the event, but scheduling a discovery call, right? If you have questions or interested in possible team coaching, and if it will work for you, just schedule time with us, and we can talk through more of the specifics about what's going on with your team.
Yes, please do connect on LinkedIn. I posted my link in the chat, but if you go to the events page, both Susan and I are listed there, and you're able to reach out. Please connect with us and reach out anytime.
Yeah, and as Claudia mentioned, every team is different. The experience is different. The issues are different, even though they may have some commonalities. And that's why, I mean, other than very general information like Claudia is talking about with her book and such, we can't really give a lot of documentation or anything like that, because it may not fit for your team.
And that should be, I mean, really the one point that I hope that you guys walk out of it was this, because team coaching is different from training, where you're being presented canned information for you to study. It is different from facilitation, again, where you're being taken through a previously established kind of curriculum, right? So it's different from consulting, where somebody else comes in from the outside and says, this is the solution. And by the way, telling it to everybody, but this is the one and only golden solution. If you do this, all your dreams will come true. And we know very much how this turns out. So you need kind of team coaches, which incidentally are experts in team transformation. Just like a personal coach is a person who's an expert in accompanying individuals through a transformation, mind shift or behavior or whatever transformation. Team coaches help teams transform. And so, whatever that transformation needs to look like for you, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Yes, so definitely reach out to either one of us if you want to talk more about it.
Fantastic. Well, this was
Thank
fun.
you. Yeah. Yes, it was.
Thank you. This was fun again. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate that you took the time to show up. Thank you also for your questions. And, feel free to give us some feedback after the show about maybe what we could have improved on or not. So that would be wonderful. We hope to see you on LinkedIn, right, Susan?
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.